Some love stories begin with fireworks. Emmanuela's began with silence, rain, and a stranger who smiled like he knew every word her heart had never spoken. The rain poured outside as if the sky itself was unraveling. Emmanuela liked rainy days. They gave her excuses. Excuses to stay indoors, excuses to hide behind her notebook, excuses to avoid the loudness of a world that never seemed to understand her quiet soul. She sat by the window of the little cafe on Rosewood Street, sipping a latte that had long gone cold. Her notebook lay open, its pages crowded with half-written sentences, messy lines, and abandoned metaphors. Her pen moved almost unconsciously, scribbling words her heart hadn't dared to say out loud. There is love in every word unspoken, a story trapped in silence, waiting for courage. She didn't know why she wrote it. Maybe because she felt it, that unspoken yearning she couldn't name. It was then she noticed him. He was seated across the room, leaning over a book, his brows furrowed in concentration. He had the kind of face you didn't easily forget. Sharp lines softened by a thoughtful gaze, a mouth that looked like it smiled often, and eyes that seemed restless, like they were always searching. Emmanuela froze when his eyes lifted and caught hers. Instead of looking away, he smiled. Not the casual, polite kind. No, this was slower, deeper, like recognition. Her heart stuttered. She quickly dropped her gaze, pretending to be absorbed in her notebook. But her hands trembled, betraying her. Why does it feel like he knows me? She bit her lip, trying to steady her thoughts. But the moment lingered in the air, charged, unexplainable, unforgettable. She had no idea that the stranger who had just caught her gaze would soon rewrite every chapter of her life. Sometimes fate doesn't knock, it pulls out a chair and sits across from you. The cafe slowly emptied as the rain drummed on. Emmanuela tried to focus on her writing, but every time she looked up, she caught the stranger glancing her way. Not in a creepy way, but in a curious way. When he finally stood, she thought he was leaving. Relief and disappointment tangled in her chest. But then her breath hitched. He walked straight to her table. "Excuse me," he said, his voice smooth, warm, and edged, with just enough hesitation to be charming. "Are you a writer?" Emmanuela blinked, startled. "Why do you ask?" He motioned toward her notebook. "You've been scribbling for hours, and you bite your lip when you're searching for the right word. Writers do that." Caught. Her cheeks flushed. "And what are you then? A detective?" He chuckled. "A journalist, which is just a fancier way of saying I'm nosy." That smile again, playful yet kind. He extended his hand. "Nathaniel." She hesitated before placing her hand in his. "Emmanuela." The touch lingered longer than it should have. And just like that, the rain didn't feel so lonely anymore. When she whispered her name into his palm, Emmanuela, she didn't know that name would echo in his heart long after Paris, long after heartbreak, long after she tried to forget him. Every word spoken between them felt like a thread, weaving something neither of them dared to name, yet both feared to lose. They talked, at first, about safe things, the weather, the cafe's terrible Wi-Fi, the difference between journalists and novelists. But soon, the conversation deepened. Nathaniel told her about his travels, chasing headlines across cities she had only ever dreamed of visiting. Emmanuela shared pieces of her unfinished stories, her fears of never being good enough to finish a book. "You already have it," Nathaniel said, watching her with an intensity that made her shift in her seat. "Have what?" "The kind of soul that bleeds onto pages." "That's rare, Emmanuela." No one had ever said something like that to her. His words wrapped around her heart like a whisper of something dangerous, something real. Nathaniel's gaze didn't waver as he said, "That's rare, Emmanuela." And she realized dangerously that this man might see more of her than anyone ever had. The first kiss is never just a kiss. It's a door, and once you open it, there's no way back. One stormy evening, their meetings became frequent, sometimes by accident, sometimes by intention. The cafe became their place. Nathaniel brought her coffee just the way she liked it, 2 sugars, extra foam. Emmanuela brought him stories, raw drafts from her notebook that she had never dared share with anyone. And in between words and silences, something bloomed. One stormy evening, as thunder cracked the sky, they found themselves sharing a blanket in their corner. The world outside was chaos, but inside, everything felt steady. "You're the most fascinating story I've stumbled into," Nathaniel whispered. Her heart tripped over itself. "I'm not a story." "Yes, you are," he murmured, leaning closer. "One I don't ever want to stop reading." When his lips touched hers, it was not hurried. It was patient. It was a kiss that said, "There's love in every word I haven't told you yet." And Emmanuela, for the first time in years, let herself believe in possibility. She kissed him back, not knowing the storm outside was nothing compared to the one fate was about to bring between them. Happiness is fragile, and sometimes all it takes to shatter it is a single sentence. But happiness never came without shadows. Nathaniel's career demanded movement. One evening, his expression turned serious. "I've been offered an assignment abroad," he confessed. 3 months in Paris. Her chest tightened. She forced a smile. "That's amazing, Nathaniel. You should go." "And what about us?" Emmanuela closed her notebook, hiding the trembling of her hands. "There is no us. It was just coffee and words." The lie sliced through her, but it was easier than admitting her fear. Love had always left her before. She refused to be left broken again. Nathaniel's jaw clenched. He didn't fight her words. He only nodded, though pain flickered in his eyes. When he walked away, Emmanuela felt her heart fracture in silence. She watched him walk away, whispering lies to herself that it had been just coffee and words. But deep down, she knew she had just let go of the one thing her heart had been waiting for. Silence can be louder than screams. And for Emmanuela, the silence of Nathaniel's absence was deafening. The weeks crawled by. Emmanuela tried to write, but her stories bled emptiness. Every character sounded hollow, every ending bleak. The cafe felt haunted without him. She told herself she didn't miss him, but every time the door chimed, her eyes betrayed her hope. At night, she scribbled his name in the margins of her notebook, over and over, like ink could keep him alive in her world. But ink wasn't enough. She wrote his name again, ink smudged by her tears, and whispered to the empty cafe, "Why did I let you go?" Sometimes the right words arrive when you least deserve them, but exactly when you need them. One quiet evening, the waitress approached her table with an envelope. "Someone left this for you," she said with a knowing smile. Emmanuela's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Emmanuela, Paris is beautiful, but every story I write here feels empty without you beside me. You were wrong, we weren't just coffee and words. You are the sentence I never want to end, Nathaniel." Her tears blurred the ink. For the first time, she allowed herself to whisper it. Maybe love doesn't always leave. Her heart raced as she clutched the letter. For the first time, hope wasn't a stranger, it was Nathaniel's handwriting calling her back to love. 3 months can feel like a lifetime. But when love is real, even lifetimes can collapse into a single heartbeat. 3 months later, Emmanuela sat in their cafe corner, her notebook clutched tightly. She didn't know if he'd come. The door chimed. Her breath hitched. Nathaniel stepped in, his eyes finding hers instantly. The world blurred. He crossed the cafe in 3 strides, pulled her into his arms, and kissed her with the desperation of a man who had been starving. "You came back," she whispered against his lips. "I would have crossed oceans for you," he said, holding her face gently. "Because Emmanuela, there's love in every word I've ever spoken to you." And as Nathaniel kissed her in that cafe, Emmanuela knew love had returned. But the question burned quietly inside her. Would it stay? Happily ever after isn't gifted, it's fought for, scarred for, and chosen every single day. Love wasn't perfect, they argued. They struggled to balance his traveling career with her need for quiet. But instead of breaking them, every challenge carved them deeper into each other's lives. Nathaniel started taking her with him on assignments. She wrote stories inspired by their travels. Together, they learned that love wasn't about avoiding storms, it was about holding each other tighter through them. Through storms, airports, arguments, and promises, one truth echoed in both their hearts. They were worth every word, every fight, every tomorrow. Every writer dreams of a final chapter. Emmanuela never realized hers wouldn't be the end of a book, but the beginning of a forever. Years later, Emmanuela stood in the cafe once more, but this time with her published novel in her hands. On the dedication page, it read, "To Nathaniel, my proof that there is love in every word." Nathaniel looked up from across the table, eyes glistening with pride. "I told you I'd be your favorite story," he teased. Emmanuela leaned forward, smiling. "You're not my story, Nathaniel. You're my forever." And when they kissed again, surrounded by the aroma of coffee and the sound of rain, they knew their love story wasn't an ending. It was only the beginning. Because sometimes, love doesn't just live in the heart, it lives in every word.